Tara Lynn with 5 Acres Honey Farm, and today's a honey garden vlog. I am on the hunt for the most nutrient-dense food that I can grow or produce here myself at home. And for about the past 2 years, I've been gardening, and anytime I hear about a food that's really known for a certain vitamin, mineral, nutrient of any sort, I have sought out to add it to my seed collection. And there's a few things that I have grown and a few things that I am going to grow for the first time this year that are pretty notorious for their nutrient density. And sometime in the past year, I read a book specifically about the nutrient density of food and how if you're growing food at home, what you could do to the soil to amend it to make it more nutritious. But what was really interesting in the book was that they had scientific studies showing how many nutrients are lost in conventionally purchased food, which may have traveled, by plane, by truck, great distance, a great amount of time, and just the scale of how the nutrients are lost in just a little bit of time, and how much our bodies are not getting from our food anymore because our society is using, such a mass distribution of food instead of finding food that's locally sourced, whether it's grown yourself or just from nearby. And it really made me think about how am I spending my money, and what about my health too? Because if I'm buying produce and I'm going to then cook it and then eat it, and then my body's not getting what it needs from it, so it's going to be hungry for some nutrients, and I just paid for the food. And so it didn't feel like I was getting like my money's worth in a way, but it also makes me concerned about how that compounds over a lifetime, and what does that mean if you're not getting the nutrients you need on a daily basis, weekly, and what are the effects of that? So being that I was already interested in growing my own food, and that really stemmed from me not wanting to be on a computer as much, and I wanted to find a way to spend my time away from a computer screen. So the side benefit of that is that, that'll get more nutritious food. So on my hunt for the most nutrient-dense food, I've come across, and I can't find the packet for it, but this is it's really good sign of why I probably can't find the packet, the seed pack, is that one of the plants I want to talk about is purslane. And I grew it for the first time last year, and what was really interesting about it is that I had read that it's considered a weed in many areas, and I think there's this saying among gardeners that a weed is just a plant that's growing where you don't want it to grow. And having grown purslane, I totally understand how it could have a reputation for growing where you don't want it to grow. I was really surprised by its life cycle. I had intended, and this is the tip that I'd like to share, is that whenever I'm growing a new plant, I like to grow it in a container so that I can keep an eye on how does it grow, what does it need, and just in general, if it attracts any certain pests. So I specifically grew the purslane in a few containers on my front deck, and it it flowered, and there was a little yellow flower on it. And I unfortunately could not find any pictures from what I grew, but you can Google purslane and you can take a look at it if you're not familiar with it. And then I didn't realize that the flower almost instantly, it was not a very long time, it goes to seed. And the seeds, I originally came over to the plant because I was concerned that caterpillars were attacking it because it looked like that little caterpillar poop on the plant, but it was actually the seed of the purslane, and it was, it looks like teeny tiny poppy seeds, and it just scattered everywhere, off the deck. So I'm curious what may be growing below the deck this next season. And what I hope is a good job at trying to contain it. As I saw the seed coming, I would just cut it and let it stay in its own container. And I had thought about transplanting some of it to another container, but I didn't want to take the risk of allowing that seed to spread. So that's probably why I moved the packet, because I didn't want it to be front and center, because I'm kind of concerned about how I should best grow it. And I was thinking of growing it inside to prevent it from spreading anywhere. Kind of surprised and disappointed with is that I did not eat it as much as I thought. And so purslane kind of going back to the nutrients, it's believed to have the highest omega-3 content than any other plant. And I thought this will be great because I could just put it on salads all summer, but I always forgot about it. Like I would go out to the garden and get the lettuce and, pick up everything in the garden. But by the time I got up to the deck, I just didn't think, oh, let me get some purslane. So I hardly had any last summer. If I do grow it again, it will be inside and I'll be much more active with actually harvesting it and using it. And I feel like the way that it grew, it would be a really good microgreen because they grow really quick. With the amount of seeds that come out of one flower, you could just really have like a lot of succession microgreen growth that you could, kind of just keep going. And something new that I'm growing this year is outredgeous, and it's a lettuce, and excuse my chipped nail polish, I really don't wear it very often, and being that it's not gardening time, I figured it would be good to put it on, but it's coming off. So outredgeous, I saw in the Baker Creek catalog last year, the whole seed catalog, that it was grown on the International Space Station. And what I thought was really interesting too when I was reading up on it, because of its high red color, when it was studied by botanists in a lab, they didn't know at first that it was from lettuce because it was such a deep red color. And because of that color, it's higher in antioxidants. But from what I read, there is no other lettuce that has the deeper red tones than this. This is Black Beauty, which I'm growing for the first time this year, and it's really high in anthocyanin, and that's what makes it have this dark color. So it is allegedly the darkest tomato in the world, and I figured hopefully it's palatable, and if it's not, I'll just throw it into sauces and it can just make the sauce healthier. And also a really dark, deep vegetable, and I actually got two, kind of a 2-for-1 with these carrots. This is Black Nebula, and I grew this before, and this is believed to be the darkest carrot, and because of that, it's really high in anthocyanin. And this I grew, and I've had better luck growing carrots in containers, and I think that's because I have more visibility into thinning them, whereas when they're in the garden, I don't see them as much to think, oh, I've got to thin them, so I don't, and you really have to stay on top of that. And I can also keep an eye on watering them more when they're in a container. So I use them in grow bags, and I grew some of these last year. They were great, so I've got a bunch going right now, and I figured why not add some more. So this is one I haven't grown before, and I just seeded some actually out in the garden, and I'm about to seed some in a grow bag as well. And this particular variety, it's Atomic Red, and this carrot is really high in lycopene. So kind of like having an array of like different antioxidants and nutrients. And I'm also really interested in growing, this is Moringa Dwarf, and it's considered to be the most nutrient-dense plant on Earth. And if you Google it, you'll see pretty much like it has the reputation of having like all the amino acids, the entire plant except the roots is not recommended to eat the roots, but the whole plant is edible. I'm not sure how palatable it is because from what I've read, it's really encouraged to cook it in soups. So I'm assuming that is to mask a flavor or maybe non-flavor. And what I thought was really interesting is I saw someone on Instagram, and I don't know who it was, but they posted recently that they grow moringa and they dehydrate the leaves and then grind it into a powder and then add it to whatever they're cooking. So that seems like an easy way to incorporate it into whatever I'm cooking at home. What's usually difficult to, get in a normal diet is magnesium, and it's fairly high in magnesium and iron, the B vitamins, and it just sounds almost too good to be true. So I'm really curious how this grows. This is a dwarf variety, and I'm definitely going to grow it in a container, to get a better idea of how it grows and keep an eye on it. Another plant that I haven't grown before, this one in particular, it says Black Hulless Barley. So I've grown barley before, but mainly as a cover crop, and I haven't harvested any. And I'm curious how this one will grow. And if it is easy to harvest, then I'll use it for, my own personal use and cooking. But if it's a little bit more challenging, I figured at the very least I could just give it to the chickens. And the chickens then, if they have a more nutrient dense diet, then we'll get the benefit of that when we, eat their eggs. And I know that it's not a plant, but I think that a lot of people don't really consider the fact that when you're using sugar, just plain table sugar, that it has absolutely zero nutritional value. There is no nutritional value in sugar. And, I really didn't care for honey much until I became a beekeeper. And then I'm like, oh, this is what honey is, because I had never had like real fresh, straight from the hive honey. And I minimally filter all the honey that I harvest. By doing that, I'm allowing like trace particles of pollen to remain in there, which have their own, nutrients that they're carrying on. But honey itself has trace amounts of potassium and iron, and at least it has, which table sugar doesn't have, is immune boosting properties. So it's antiviral, antifungal, antimicrobial. And so you're getting those immune boosters, whereas table sugar is not going to do that for you. So I'm like looking for ways where I can like cook more with honey. This past year I had absolutely zero honey harvest. So I'm hoping that this will be a good year for honey, and so I'll be able to cook a lot more with it and really reduce any use of plain white table sugar. And this is actually the bottle zero is what I call it, the very first bottle of honey that I ever harvested back in 2018. And I have never opened it since then, and I don't know on what occasion I will, but each year, and so far I've only harvested in 2 years, because my first year I didn't harvest any, and then this past year there was nothing to harvest from them. But over time it would be really nice to have a whole collection of them. I am still on the hunt for more nutrient-dense food, and I would love to learn if you are growing anything that you've been really impressed with or that you think a lot of people don't know about. I would like to learn about it and potentially add it to the garden. So that would be really great if you could comment, let me know. And if you're new to my channel, I post videos every Sunday, Monday, and Friday on beekeeping, mainly chemical-free beekeeping, organic gardening, permaculture, backyard chickens, and quail, and anything and all things related to all that fun. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing about what you're growing.